The sun was hot and cruel above the desert planet. Waves of heat danced across the endless golden sand. A small figure walked slowly across the dunes, her silver skin shining under the twin suns. Her long cloak moved with the wind, and behind her followed a tired human. His name was Jack, a crashed pilot from Earth, lost and alone. The alien girl who found him called herself Lyra, and she had saved his life. He didn't know why she was helping him, but she said he was meant to see something. She never smiled, never laughed, and always looked over her shoulder like someone or something was watching. Jack had many questions, but Lyra only gave short answers. Now, after walking for hours through the hot sands, she finally stopped. "There," she said quietly, pointing ahead. Jack followed her gaze and saw something strange rising from the sand. At first, he thought it was just a hill, but as he got closer, he saw sharp edges and carvings. It was a giant pyramid, half buried in sand, old and broken, but still powerful. "What is this place?" Jack asked, his voice dry and tired. Lyra didn't answer right away. "This is forbidden," she whispered. "No one from my people comes here." "Not anymore." Jack looked at her, confused. "Then why are you bringing me here?" "Because the pyramid called to you," she said, not meeting his eyes. "The desert doesn't speak," he muttered, shaking his head. "It does if you listen," she replied, her voice distant. They reached the base of the pyramid, where old stone steps led downward into the sand. Strange symbols were carved into the walls. Some looked alien, but others looked strangely human. Jack felt something cold in his chest, like the air had changed. The closer he got to the entrance, the heavier the air became. It felt like walking into a memory, one that didn't belong to him. Lyra touched a symbol on the wall, and the stone slowly slid open with a low grinding sound. Darkness waited inside, deep and silent. Jack hesitated, but Lyra stepped in without fear, so he followed inside. The walls glowed with a faint blue light. The carving showed pictures, images of tall aliens, humans in armor, and something else, a giant star burning in the sky, and ships leaving it behind. Jack reached out and touched one of the carvings. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, it lit up like fire. Lyra gasped and pulled him back, her eyes wide. "You shouldn't have touched that," she said, her voice shaking. Jack pulled back his hand, confused. It felt like it wanted. "Me too," he said quietly. "The pyramid is awake now," Lyra said, looking deeper into the hall. "And it knows you're here." A low hum filled the air, and the floor beneath them shook lightly. From the shadows ahead, a gust of cold wind blew past them. Though there was no wind in the tomb, Jack felt like eyes were watching him from the walls. Lyra turned to him. "Once we go further, there's no turning back." Jack looked around and took a deep breath. "I didn't come all this way to turn around," he said, trying to sound brave. She gave him a strange look, half worry, half something else. Without another word, she started walking again, and Jack followed. They passed through a narrow hallway with more carvings on every wall. Some showed humans and aliens fighting side by side. Others showed them falling. There was pain in the pictures, and something hiding in the shadows of the past. They reached a large chamber with a stone table in the center. On it lay a round device glowing faintly blue. Lyra stopped and whispered, "That was not here before." Jack stepped forward, drawn to the device. It looked like some kind of ancient control panel, shaped to fit a human hand. He hesitated, then slowly placed his palm on it. The room went dark, then symbols began glowing across the walls, one by one. A loud click echoed as a hidden door slowly opened in the far wall. Beyond it, darkness stretched far into the earth. Lyra looked pale. "This place was sealed for 10,000 years, she said. Jack looked into the darkness, heart pounding. "And now it's open," he whispered. Neither of them knew what they had awakened, but something deep inside the pyramid had waited a long time, and now it was no longer sleeping. Jack's fingers were still on the glowing panel when the air around him suddenly dropped in temperature. A deep, low sound rolled through the pyramid like a beast waking from a long sleep. Lyra grabbed his wrist and pulled him back, her voice shaking. "You touched the core, human," she whispered. "Why did you do that?" "I had to," Jack replied, though he wasn't sure why. Something inside him had guided his hand, like it had been waiting for him. The newly opened door before them was dark, cold, and wide like a mouth. Mist floated out from it, swirling around their feet like it was alive. Lyra stepped back, her body tense. "This place isn't for the living," she said softly. "It's not a passage, it's a test." Jack looked into the darkness, and though he couldn't see anything, he felt something was looking back at him. He turned to Lyra, trying to stay calm. "If it wanted to kill us, it could have done it already," he said. She didn't answer, only stared at the door like it was something cursed. The hum in the air grew louder. A quiet voice echoed from the tunnel, soft, slow, and in English. "Return," it whispered. "Return to us." Jack froze, his blood going cold. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "That language. It hasn't been spoken in thousands of years," she whispered. "It was Earth's voice," Jack muttered. Stepping forward, Lyra grabbed his arm again. "No more touching," she warned. But it was too late. Jack was already moving toward the door. The hallway beyond was narrow and curved downward. Blue lights lit the walls as they passed, glowing brighter the closer Jack came. The carvings here were different, more human in shape, more familiar. There were pictures of Earth, ships lifting off, and strange stars in the background. He stopped at one carving that showed a group of humans and aliens standing together. Above them, a symbol glowed faintly, the same shape that had lit up when Jack first touched the pyramid. "What is this?" he whispered. Lyra stood behind him, silent. He looked at her. "You've never seen this part?" She shook her head. "My people don't go this deep. The old stories say this place belongs to your kind." As they reached the end of the hall, they found another room, this one round and tall. A large platform stood in the center, and something was resting on it, a skeleton dressed in strange armor, with a cube clutched tightly in both hands. Jack stepped closer, slowly. He could feel something vibrating in the air around it. It wasn't just old, it was powerful. He reached for the cube, and Lyra shouted, "Wait!" But his hand had already made contact. A burst of light shot through the chamber, and Jack stumbled back, falling to the ground. His eyes went wide as a flood of visions poured into his mind. He saw stars exploding, battles between ships, humans, shouting commands in languages he didn't know, and a voice deep and ancient spoke clearly in his head. "You are the last blood of the Makers," it said. "You are the key," Jack screamed, grabbing his head. Lyra knelt beside him, frightened. "What did you see?" she asked. Jack's voice was shaking. I saw everything." The room began to pulse with light, and the cube in the skeleton's hands floated upward. It hovered in the air, spinning slowly, and the entire room started to shift. Walls retracted, floors opened, and new symbols lit up across the surfaces. The pyramid was moving, changing from within. Lyra pulled Jack to his feet. "We have to leave now." But the only exit had already sealed shut. They were trapped, deep inside the ancient structure. And something inside had fully awakened. The voice returned, this time filling the chamber. "Commander identified, system restoring, preparing for release." Jack looked at Lyra, his face pale. "Commander?" he repeated. She stepped back, eyes locked on him like she no longer recognized him. "Who are you, Jack?" she asked in a whisper. He didn't have an answer. Far above them, the outer layer of the pyramid cracked open just a little. A hidden light pulsed from within, visible only to the sky. And somewhere far across the desert, another ancient machine stirred from its long sleep. The silence was wrong, not peaceful, not calm, but heavy. Thick like water, Jack stood still, barely breathing. The cube floating inches above his head, pulsing with slow blue light. Lyra didn't speak. Her hands clenched tightly by her sides. The pyramid's walls had stopped shifting, but the air had changed. It was no longer just a tomb. It felt like a mind watching them, waiting, remembering. Then came the whispers. Not loud, not sharp, but soft like the wind inside a grave. They filled the chamber, crawling under Jack's skin and into his ears, and they spoke in English. Returned. 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 Jack backed away from the floating cube, his heart pounding. Did you hear that? He asked, voice dry and low. Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes locked on the air above them. They know you now, she whispered. They remember you, but I've never been here before. Jack said, trying to make sense of it. Lyra turned to him, her voice shaking. Maybe not you, but someone like you, someone from long ago. She pointed at the carvings behind him. There, on the stone wall, was an image of a man in armor holding the same cube, and beside him, a woman who looked just like Lyra. Jack stared at it, stunned. That's not possible, he said quietly. Lyra said nothing. But her breathing had become quick and shallow suddenly. A loud grinding sound echoed through the chamber. Another door opened at the far end, this one tall and glowing with red symbols. From the shadows inside, something moved. It stepped into the light, tall, thin, wrapped in armor that shimmered like starlight. Its face was hidden behind a metal mask, and its eyes glowed the same cold blue as the cube. Jack instinctively stepped in front of Lyra, even though he didn't know what he was doing. The figure didn't attack, didn't speak, just tilted its head like it was studying him. Then it knelt, slowly, one knee to the ground. Commander, it said in the voice of the whispers. Jack's breath caught in his throat. I'm not your commander, he said, but the figure didn't move. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. It thinks you are someone reborn, she said, one of the originals. The armored figure rose again and walked toward the center of the room. It placed its hand over the cube, which slowly floated into its grasp. Then, it pointed at the red door. Follow, it said, and turned without waiting. Jack glanced at Lyra, unsure. She shook her head. This is far beyond anything my people were taught. Still, they followed. The red light of the door passed over them like warm breath, and the air on the other side was colder, darker, older. The corridor was long, and the walls were different here. No carvings, no symbols, just smooth black stone that seemed to drink light. Their footsteps echoed too loud, and the silence behind them felt like it was chasing them. Finally, they entered a chamber even larger than before. At its center stood a platform, and above it, floating gently in the air, was a city, not a real one, but a projection buildings. Ships, people, glowing with blue light. The armored figure turned to Jack. This is what was lost, it said, and must be found. Jack stepped closer, staring at the floating city. It looked Earth-like, but not modern, more advanced, more ancient. How long ago was this? He asked. Before memory, the figure replied. Before silence. Lyra touched one of the projected buildings, and it responded by showing scenes. Families eating together, soldiers training, scientists flying through the stars. Then it shifted. Explosions, fire, screams, ships crashing, planets burning. The last image was a group of humans locking something deep inside a stone chamber, and Jack understood. This pyramid. It was a vault, he said, a vault to hide what survived. The armored figure turned away, and now it has been opened. A sound like thunder cracked above them, and the city projection vanished. The cube in the figure's hand glowed brighter, pulsing faster, and the pyramid itself began to vibrate again. Something else was waking up, something bigger, deeper, older. Lyra stepped closer to Jack and whispered, I don't think we're alone anymore. And from beneath their feet, deep in the core of the pyramid, something growled. Jack couldn't move. Something inside the floor below him was alive. Not in the way animals breathe or machines hum, but in the way storms gather and wait. It was ancient, heavy, and angry. The growl faded, but it left behind a deep, shaking silence. Lyra grabbed his sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "We should not be here," she said. "We were never meant to go this deep." But Jack felt pulled. Like the pyramid wasn't just reacting to him, it was calling him, the armored figure. Didn't move, didn't speak, only watched. Blue lights flickered on the walls again, not as symbols this time, but as memories. Scenes played around them like ghosts trapped in stone. One showed Jack's face, but not him, not now. It was someone else, someone older, stronger, dressed in armor. Leading soldiers through fire, Lyra stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. "That's you," she whispered. "No," Jack said. But even he didn't believe it. He couldn't look away. The memory version of himself was giving orders to both humans and aliens. He raised the glowing cube like a weapon or a shield. Then a giant shadow fell over the scene, and everything went dark. The walls turned cold again. The armored figure finally spoke. "You remember now," it said. "The shape of your soul has not changed." Jack shook his head. "That's not possible," he said. "I'm just a pilot. I'm nobody." But the figure replied, "You were everyone once." The room began to shift again. New walls pulled back, revealing an elevator made of light and sound. The floor opened below it, showing only darkness. The armored figure stepped onto it and gestured. "Below is the heart," it said, "and the truth." Jack looked at Lyra, and she looked at him. "I don't trust it," she said softly. Jack gave a tired smile. "I don't trust anything anymore," he replied, and stepped onto the platform. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then followed. The platform began to descend. Slowly, without noise, the light above faded and the dark below welcomed them. As they moved deeper into the earth, Jack felt pressure building in his chest. Not pain, but recognition. Like an old song returning to a forgotten ear. Finally, the platform stopped. They stepped into a vast chamber that hummed like a beating heart. A giant machine stood in the center, half buried, half alive. Its surface pulsed with blue veins, like blood flowing through a sleeping god. Jack stepped forward, drawn by the glow. Lyra reached for him, but didn't stop him. The machine opened its core, and inside was another cube, larger, darker still. Jack's hand moved on its own, and when he touched it, the entire room exploded with light. The walls disappeared. Suddenly, they were no longer in the pyramid. They were floating in space, surrounded by stars. Planets moved past them like dust, and in the center was Earth, shining, whole, untouched. A voice spoke again, but it wasn't the whisper from before. It was clear, warm, and full of sadness. "Welcome back, Commander," it said. "Your exile is over," Jack gasped. "I've never been in exile," he said. The voice replied, "Not in body, but in memory." He saw images of the First War. Humans and aliens fighting side by side against a creature made of black smoke and teeth. When they lost, the last humans vanished, leaving pieces of their power hidden in pyramids across the stars. Pieces like this one, waiting for a soul strong enough to wake them, waiting for someone like Jack. The vision faded, and they were back in the chamber. The cube in the machine sank into the floor, and the pyramid itself began to rise slowly, lifting from the sand above. Outside, the desert trembled as the old ship revealed its true form. Lyra looked at Jack, eyes wide with something like fear and awe. "You're not just a man," she said quietly. Jack turned to her, his voice barely steady. "No," he whispered, "I'm a warning." And far above, in the cold stars, a signal was sent, a pulse that stretched across space, waking other pyramids and something else, something watching, waiting to return. The desert was no longer still. Wind howled across the sands as the pyramid broke free from the earth. Stone crumbled from its base, revealing smooth metal beneath. Ancient engines hidden for thousands of years groaned back to life. Dust rose like smoke, and from miles away, small creatures ran in fear. Jack stood at the edge of the chamber, staring up as the walls split open above him. He could see the sky now clear, wide, and blue, but it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like the start of something heavy. Lyra stood beside him, her hair whipped by the wind coming from below. "The ship," she said slowly. "It's not a pyramid at all," Jack didn't reply. He could feel it breathing under his feet. Not like a machine, but like something once dead, now alive again. The armored figure stepped forward, cube still in its hand. "This vessel is the last of the seed ships," it said, "built to carry life across stars." Jack blinked, his voice low. "Life or war?" The figure looked at him, unmoving. "Both," it replied. A new voice suddenly echoed across the ship. It wasn't loud, it was thin and cold, like a whisper through metal. "You've opened the gate, human," it said. "You were warned." Jack spun around. "Who's there?" Lyra looked up, her face pale. "That voice. It doesn't come from here," she said. "It comes from space." The ship's walls shimmered and projected a view of orbit. High above the planet, something was approaching, not a starship, no. Lights, no shape, only a shadow moving faster than physics allowed. Jack stepped back, heart pounding. "What is that?" The armored figure turned slowly. "A response," it said, "to your awakening." Suddenly, alarms echoed throughout the vessel, deep and long like a warning from a buried god. The voice returned, colder than before. "Return to dust, forgotten." "Flame," it said. "You will not rise again," the ship responded, its metal body shifting around Jack and Lyra. The command deck formed around them like a growing tree, wrapping them in glass, metal, and memory. Jack found himself standing at a console glowing with old symbols. His hands hovered above it, and without thinking, he touched it. The ship lit up with energy, lights racing across its body like veins. Outside, the desert exploded with force as the ship lifted fully from the ground. Towers rose from its sides, weapons that looked more like instruments than guns. Lyra stumbled as the floor shifted beneath them. She grabbed Jack's arm, her voice full of panic. "I don't know how to fly this thing." Jack didn't either, but his hands were already moving, touching symbols like he had done it before in another life. The ship's engines roared, and the pyramid, now a warship, rose high into the air. Above them, the shadow from space dropped closer, no longer just a blur. It took shape, long, sharp, wrong, like it was made of screaming black stone. Jack stared at it, his pulse racing. "Is that the enemy?" The armored figure replied, "That is what killed the stars." Without warning, the black vessel fired. The sky burned red as beams of dark light rained down, but the seed ship blocked it, raising a shield that shimmered like water. Jack felt every impact in his bones, but the ship held strong. It responded by sending out a blast of light, pure and golden. It wasn't a weapon, it was a signal. The enemy ship recoiled, and for a moment, the shadow cracked. Jack saw something inside it, eyes, hundreds of them, blinking in hate. "They remember you," Lyra whispered, "and they fear what you used to be." The black ship screamed, not in sound, but in thought echoing in their minds. Jack gritted his teeth, pressing both hands onto the console. The seed ship charged forward, cutting through clouds and darkness. Engines howled, and the weapons came alive with blue fire. Jack didn't fully understand how he was doing it, but the ship understood him. It didn't ask for orders, it remembered them. The first blast of human light hit the enemy ship, and it reeled back into space. The battle was just beginning, but something had changed. The stars knew he had returned, and the ancient enemy was no longer alone in the dark. Asterisk, the sky tore apart. Lightning without clouds cracked across the stars, as if the universe itself was remembering something it tried to forget. Jack stood at the center of the command deck, hands glowing faintly from touching the ancient console. Around him, the seed ship pulsed with strange energy, not just power, but memory. The walls flickered with flashes of battles, faces long dead, cities long turned to dust. Lyra stared at him, her voice lost somewhere in her throat. She had seen Machines before, weapons before, but never anything like this. This was not just a ship. It was a ghost wearing armor, and Jack had become its soul, far above. The black enemy ship twisted unnaturally in space. It wasn't flying, it was crawling across gravity like a shadow sliding over broken glass. The seed ship rose to meet it, silent but sure. Its old weapons hummed with a sound that felt like singing bones. But inside, Jack was trembling. He didn't remember the wars he was being shown. But they remembered him. Every image, every whisper, every touch of glowing metal made him feel like a man standing in two times. The present and a future already written long ago. Suddenly, the ship spoke, not through speakers, not through sound, but directly into his mind. System unlocked, it said. Final room available, core chamber. Jack blinked. Where is it? The walls shifted and a path opened behind him. Lyra looked at him, uncertain. You want to go deeper? Now? Jack nodded. If I don't understand who I was, I can't fight what's coming. They walked through a tunnel of moving light. The walls rippled like water around them, showing scenes as they passed. In one, Jack stood in a council of both human and alien leaders. In another, he was bleeding, handing the cube to a younger soldier. The last vision showed him locking the door from the inside, choosing to stay behind while others escaped. When they reached the core chamber, it was silent. No glowing panels, no lights, just a single chair facing a large circular window. Outside the window was space, and the black enemy ship waiting. Jack stepped toward the chair. It looked old, but not broken. He sat, and the ship took a breath. The window darkened, then became a mirror. Jack saw himself, but the reflection was wrong. His face was older, colder, marked by war. The reflection looked into his eyes and spoke. You died, it said, but the soul burns brighter than bone. Then the chair lit up, and from the ceiling dropped a thin silver thread. It touched his forehead, and Jack gasped. Suddenly, memories poured into him, not pictures, not sounds, but feelings, rage, loss, hope, and sacrifice. The kind of memories only a dying commander could carry. He saw Earth falling. He saw ships screaming through voids while children cried in silence. He saw his old self choose to bury the last seed ship on this alien planet. Until one like me wakes, he whispered. Finishing the thought aloud, Lyra stepped forward, eyes full of something strange, respect, maybe even fear. You were a myth, she said softly, and now you're flesh. The seed ship lit up. Once more, all its systems turned green, and the ship rose faster, louder, stronger. Weapons unfolded from hidden bays, sleek and ancient. The stars turned red again as the enemy returned. Now twice as large, it had grown, fed on fear, and brought others. Smaller shadow ships swirled around it like insects around fire. Jack stood, the cube floating near his hand. I remember now, he said quietly. I am not a warrior, he added. I am the fire that ends wars. The enemy charged, and the seed ship moved like light itself. Blades of energy cut through the dark. Shields rippled with power unseen since the galaxy was young. For every enemy ship that struck, the seed ship struck back tenfold, not in hate but in justice. Inside the chamber, Lyra fell to her knees as she watched the old power unfold. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not out of sadness, but from the weight of truth. The myths were real, and the human they feared was also the one they needed most, above, in the heart of the battle. Something changed in the black ship. It stopped attacking. It began to speak, not in words, but in raw thought. One question echoed across space, sharp and ancient. Why have you returned? Jack stared into the dark and answered without hesitation. To finish what you started. The sky had no color now, only fire and shadow twisting above the wounded planet. The seed ship stood like a burning mountain, floating in silence, its weapons no longer firing, its lights holding steady, and inside, at the heart of the storm, Jack stood with his hand on the cube. The enemy ship had stopped attacking, but it hadn't fled. It hovered there like a beast confused, like something ancient trying to understand fear. It had spoken a question, not with sound, but with mind. "Why have you returned?" Jack had answered, "To finish what you started, now." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Lyra stood behind him, trembling not from fear, but from what she knew was about to happen. This wasn't just war, it was history collapsing into the present, and Jack was no longer just a man. He was a living echo of the galaxy's last hope. The seed ship spoke again, not just to Jack, but through him. To restore balance, one must first break silence. Energy gathered across the ship's surface, glowing brighter than before. The cube in Jack's hand cracked open, revealing a white light that made Lyra shield her eyes. Jack felt nothing, no pain, no heat, just purpose. Images rushed through him. Planets lost to darkness, people erased by the enemy's hunger, but also planets saved, alliances formed, lives changed by human hands. He saw that the war had not been about territory or pride. It had been about memory. The enemy wanted to erase all that remembered what humans had once stood for. The seed ship rose higher, now above the upper atmosphere. Jack and Lyra stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the enemy ship grow massive in front of them. It spread its wings, long dark shapes like claws, and from within its body came hundreds more ships, not machines, not living things, but something in between. The end had arrived. Jack looked at Lyra. "Tell your people to hide," he said. "This is going to change everything." Lyra nodded, her voice shaking. "You're going to fight all of them?" Jack shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm going to remind them who we were." He stepped onto the central platform, now glowing white. The seed ship responded, opening fully like a flower blooming under a burning sky. A signal burst out, not just sound or light, but thought. It reached far, beyond the system, beyond known space. And the galaxy answered. Old stations powered up. Long-dead human outposts began to blink again. Buried machines hidden in moons and ruins lifted their heads and looked to the sky. A million silent allies remembered who they were waiting for. And they moved, across the stars. Ancient human-built ships came alive. Sleeping eyes whispered one word to each other, again and again, "Commander." The Black Fleet paused, feeling the shift. Its hunger hesitated. Jack looked up at it and said one word, "Run." The seed ship fired, not with missiles, not with lasers, but with truth. A blast of energy older than war itself, pure and blinding. It ripped through the black ships like sunlight through shadow. No sound, just sudden peace. One by one, the enemy vessels cracked, broke, and vanished into ash. The largest one tried to retreat, but the seed ship followed. Jack didn't blink, didn't speak, just watched as the last darkness was burned away. Then, silence, real silence, the kind that comes after thunder, after survival, after victory. The seed ship slowly returned to orbit, its power dimming but steady. Inside, Jack stood still, the cube now quiet in his hand. Lyra approached him, her face pale. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack looked into the stars. "For now," he said, "but the galaxy has woken up." Lyra looked at him carefully. "What will you do now?" Jack turned to her, a tired smile on his face. "Rebuild," he said. "Not empires, not weapons, just hope." She nodded, and together they stepped back onto the deck. Below them, the world waited. Above them, a million stars began to shine again, and somewhere, far across the galaxy, others watched in silence. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, but as legends reborn.